This podcast does not provide medical advice. Please listen to the complete disclosure at the end of the recording.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Everyone Dies, the podcast. I'm Marianne Matzo.
And I'm Charlie Navarrete.
So put your feet up, relax, and thank you for spending the next hour with us as Charlie talks about Hispanic funeral customs and, of course, the food that's served. In the second half, I'm going to be talking about what's now known about the long-term effects of COVID-19. In our third half, Charlie's going to talk about people who are not buried with their funeral markers. So they're buried someplace else, I guess, is the
That's
story.
It. Exactly.
I am so smart. In the segment called, Where Are They Now?
Da-da-da.
So we're going to start by exploring some different cultural practices regarding burial and food. But I want to say right up front that not everyone in a cultural group follows all practices in their cultural heritage. People take a little of this and a little of that, and they make up their own beliefs. They make up their own customs.
Like a quilt.
Like a quilt of many colored quilts.
A multi-patched quilt. You know, you got one little patch of brownies, another little patch of, hamburgers, another little patch of pasta, spaghetti, marinara sauce, extra garlic, please. Yes, I got it.
A technicolor
quilt of food.
Coats.
Unless you have a black and white TV. Mm-hmm.
So who has that anymore? So anyway, don't go like saying, oh, you're Hispanic, I know exactly what to bring you. No, because they might be going in a whole other direction. But from the point of view of knowing that these are the traditional customs, and if you're going to a funeral, say, hey, what can I bring? Or at least know that some of these things may be occurring. So that is my disclosure on culture. Hispanic culture is rich and vibrant and exuberant and colorful, and these traditions date back through centuries of cultural influences from more than 20 countries. So the Hispanic family bond is strong. It brings a special meaning in terms of saying goodbye to a loved one. Catholicism is very deeply rooted within Hispanic heritages. But even non-Catholics include Catholic traditions in the funeral. So it's all very confusing. But Charlie's going to make it all clearly understood.
Says you.
Charles?
Yes. Hi. So, Hispanic funeral ceremony. So
I just dripped Diet Coke down my leg. Ask me how I did that. I don't know.
Gravity?
Well, now my leg is cold.
Maybe the new puppy can go up and rub against your leg and keep you warm.
Well, there's an idea.
Yes.
But as you were saying.
Oh, yes, I was saying. So, Hispanic funeral ceremonies. Well, visitation is a time to remember the loved one and spend time with the family. Usually it starts later in the day, lasting longer than 4 hours, and sometimes even late into the night or overnight. Food such as pan dulce or pastelitos and coffee are often served at the funeral home. Conchas. Conchas like a shell. So it's shaped like a shell. That's why it's called concha.
Like conch shell.
Yes, like a conch shell. Exactly. Yes. So, conchas are a soft and sweet Mexican bread with a white topping that resembles the surface of a seashell. There we are. Seashell shell. This is where the concha gets its name, since concha means shell in Spanish. The classic color of the topping is white, but it can also be pink, yellow, or brown, which is, of course, chocolate flavored. So, conchas are ubiquitous in Mexican culture. They are available at virtually every Mexican bakery, also known as a panaderia, where they are usually the most sold sweetbread. Served not only at funerals, conchas can be consumed at any time of day, whether it be for breakfast or for a midnight snack. kind of like something like a martini, because, it's always 5 o'clock somewhere on the planet.
Right. Especially in 2020. Nobody even's looking at the clocks.
Oh, my God. Yes.
Drink up.
So,
or concha up.
Concha up.
As they say.
Yes. So you can
I don't know who says that, but.
you pour your drink into a concha shell, a real one. Make sure the end is closed up, put a little piece of tape on it, and then, go to town, as if you were Thor or something. So, Cuban pastries, also known as pasteles or pastelitos, are baked puff pastry type pastries. Puff-baked pastry type pastries. She sells seashells by the seashore. Okay, good. Another little rhyme thing. So, puff pastry type pastries filled with sweet or savory fillings. Traditional fillings include cream cheese quesitos, guava, or a pastelito de guava. Pastelito de guayaba and cheese, pineapple and coconut. And if I may add, if you're going to have pineapple and coconut, you might as well get rid of the bread, put that into a glass, and add some rum. That's my professional opinion.
Put the rum in the coconut and drink it all up?
Put the rum in the coconut. Yes.
See, it really doesn't take much to get Charlie going.
No, it doesn't.
I'm sorry. Go on.
The most popular pastelito filling is, however, ground beef, cooked with onions and peppers. I've had that. Pieces of boiled egg or raisins are added to join the beef. In case the beef is broken, you can now join it, put it together, and it comes back as a small cow. Cheese is often a popular, kind of like a cow Frankenstein, or a Frankenstein cow. So, cheese is also a popular filling. But, other popular fillings can be made of chicken, seafood, veggies, any savory combination. As usual, of course.
Did your mom make these?
Yes. But she, being America, it's like she was able to find them at stores. So, but yeah, growing up, yes. She would make, pastries like this, sweets, usually meat flavored pastries. But, in Detroit, there's a big, Mexican community. So, the authentic Mexican bakeries, would have, authentic, these authentic, pastelitos. And, my dad would pick some up, bring them home. And then my mother would say, oh, no, this is not the way to make them. I don't know why they made them like this. This is no. So, yes, so she would, but eventually we just had them at the store. And then my sister started to make them.
Does Kathy make good pastelitos?
I don't remember the last time she made them. She makes great enchiladas. Her Mexican cooking is very good. My Mexican eating is I think is better. But her
I'm pretty good at that cooks. Myself, actually.
Yeah.
Now, when you went to downtown Detroit, what was your favorite Mexican restaurant?
Ooh. For a while, it was Mexican Village. That was yours, wasn't it?
See, that's my favorite. Yeah, okay. That's my favorite.
Yes, right. But every time I'm back, what's the name of it? It is a classic Mexican. Oh, brother, it's a classic Mexican name.
Xochimilco?
Shit, thank you, Maria. That's it. It's on a corner. Is it Bagley? Is it Bagley? It might be Bagley. I don't remember.
I can't remember, but I know. Yeah.
It's right on the corner. It's on the corner, right?
For those of you who don't know, Detroit has a little Mexican area.
Called Mexican Village. Yeah.
Well, is the actual area called Mexican Village?
Yeah, it's like that's a neighborhood called Mexican Village. Yeah.
And there's a restaurant called Mexican Village that when I'd go home, would be my one of my first stops. Actually, I'd pick up my mother and say, let's go have lunch because it's so good.
Yeah, it's good to see you too. Get in the car, Mom.
And then the other was Xochimilco, but I don't know. I always like Mexican Village better.
Yeah, it's really good. So, yeah, always go there. That and, of course, Lafayette, Coney Island. Those two places.
Well, that's not Mexican Village.
Well, no, but it's kind of close. It's within...
Not even.
Excuse me. It's what? Less of a mile away, maybe?
We're talking about Mexican food, not distance.
How about a Mexican eating food? How about a Mexican eating food? So it's kind of like, there you are.
Anyway, you were saying?
I digressed. If I did,
only a little.
Just a little. If I didn't mention, these recipes are at our website, everyonedies.org.
Some like you can get a zillion of these recipes. There's like one of each, you know? Mm-hmm. Give you a sample of what you can make.
Very good. So moving on. Candles and flowers play an important role at the visitation, as well as, decorating the burial grounds. Visitations are, mostly held at a funeral home, but others, and again, it's just based on the, family's, individual traditions. Folks prefer to conduct funerals within the privacy of their own homes. Many families also have a service at a Catholic church the next day. The casket is usually taken to the church, and the service will likely include a full mass dedicated to the loved one. Additionally, a rosary is sometimes said as well, usually conducted by a priest at either the funeral home or at the family's home. So the burial itself. Following the funeral ceremony, the burial takes place with family and friends at the cemetery for the interment. Many times, a priest is also present, and music, including live mariachis, play by the gravesite.
Really?
Not my family, but the price of a mariachi to go out to when my mom was buried. No.
Have you ever been to a funeral where there was a mariachi?
Not that I recall. No, I don't think so. No. Have you?
No.
No, I haven't. Afterward, okay, so after that, sometime mariachi playing by the gravesite. After that, family members may get together to share a meal, pray, and discuss memories of the loved one. I don't see anything here about having a cocktail, because I know with my mother, and in her honor, we all drank actually a pineapple and coconut concoction.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Was that like the family favorite?
No, not at all. It was her favorite. And there was always a code word, because she really was not a drinker, but she loved the taste of pineapple and coconut. So I'd make her a little drink. She'd take a sip. She'd look at me, or my sister made it, and like this horrified look on her face. There's no alcohol in here, right? I go, Ma, really? Come on. Why are you even asking that question? Okay, I just want to make sure. And then she'd ask for a double. It was just a little ritual we went through. I don't know. So, mainly because of the Catholic influence, cremation is still not as usual for most Hispanics. But those that select it often place or bury the cremated remains at a cemetery or church to follow the Vatican's guidelines on the conservation of the ashes. In some cases, Hispanics wish to be returned to their homeland to be buried with other members of the family. Not my family. So, after the burial.
So was your mom cremated?
No.
So she's buried in what cemetery?
She's 6 feet under. She's 86. She kicked the bucket. Never mind.
No, she's dead. But where's she buried?
Don't tell me. In Detroit. shoot, I forgot the name of the. Yeah, I'm not going to say the name of the cemetery. I don't want to, people disturbing my mother. Yeah, I don't.
We don't want all our listeners going there with a mariachi band and pineapple and coconut drinks.
Well, I don't know. Maybe the mariachi band, she'd get a kick out of that. I think I mentioned to you, Marianne. So I was there at the end. And my mother was in and out of consciousness, and she always and loved mariachi music, loved the music she grew up with as a teenager and in her 20s. And as she started she didn't have full blown dementia, but it was getting there. I used to sing a lot, when I did a lot of theater and stuff. And just one day out of the blue, she said, sing me, and I don't remember the name of the song. I said, I've no, so I thank goodness for the internet. I looked it up, and so I started singing it. So I would do that every time, I'd get on the phone with her when I wasn't there, and I'd sing to her once in a while. So that's what I did. At the very end, there were, I knew there were some artists she really liked and a couple songs she just always loved. And I sang that to her. It's a thing, she didn't respond, but I knew she heard it, and it was, peaceful for her. So, it was a good thing.
That's a nice gift that you gave her, and a good memory for you.
Yeah.
I'll have you do that when I'm dying.
You want me to sing you an old Mexican mariachi song?
No, I'll pick something else.
Okay. Show tune?
Probably.
Old Dolly?
Probably like
Hello, Dolly. Yes, sorry, what?
No, probably like something from Man of La Mancha, to dream the impossible dream. That would be good.
My big audition song was always Man of La Mancha. Not the Impossible Dream, but Man of La Mancha. Yeah.
Ah.
Yeah.
I am Don Quixote.
Hear me now, oh the great. Yes. I am yeah, that. Yeah. So on the anniversary of death, so obviously a year later, usually a mass is set up on the anniversary date of the death in the name of the loved one. Sometimes there's a reception with food afterward. Why don't they ever mention reception with drinks afterwards? Special days within the Hispanic culture. Because
that goes without saying. It goes without saying.
Well, people get together. You don't have to say food either. So, food and drink. I don't think an extra word would hurt. Okay.
So you want to change the culture to include drinks, or at least talk about it.
Well, it's not exactly changing the culture, but to have it out there in the open. Yeah. So
take the drinking out of the closet.
Yes, exactly. On special days, special days, because there are, because within the Hispanic culture, death is revered, and holidays are set aside to pay special respect to the dead. Celebrations often depend on the country of origin. For example, All Souls Day, November 1st. Families pray, remember loved ones, attend Mass, and visit the ceremony to spruce up their loved ones' memorials, and have a cocktail. I just added that part up. And it's usually not a cocktail. At the site, you may need a flask.
It's like the fortune cookies where you read the fortune and say between the sheets. For you read whatever and you say, and have a cocktail.
There we are.
There you are.
There we are, yes. And of course, there's also Dia de los Muertos, Day of the Dead, on November 2nd, where families make altars honoring their loved ones, visit the cemetery with flowers, food, music, alcohol optional, to celebrate those that have died. What was I talking about? Yes, burial things. So I digressed a bit, but listen, Everyone listening, please go to everyonedies.org. That's the number one dies.org, and send us your own recipes to share with others. Also, we appreciate your questions and anything else you want to tell us.
And your drinks.
And your drink.
And alcohol.
It's a quote. Never mind. So you can email us at everyonedies.org. Please join our Facebook group, Everyone Dies. And please remember to rate and review this podcast. Molly, our fabulous Twitter fancy lady, is hoping you contribute to her job security by following us on Twitter and reposting her tweets.
And drinking.
And drinking. Salud.
So.
Yes.
Oh, I guess that was the end of that. That was great. I was so focused on the tagline, and alcohol,
and everything, but everything else.
That I missed the end. So Charles, in our second half,
what's up with this?
Hey, in our second half, we're going to talk about COVID. And, it's not like the first time we've ever talked about COVID.
Please let it be the last time. But what are the chances of that? Yeah, I know.
Well, it's always something.
Yep.
So when COVID first started, the primary focus was on preventing transmission, flattening the curve and not dying if we got it. Mm-hmm. So as time has gone on, we've really learned more about the disease. And so today I wanted to chat a bit about one aspect of COVID-19, and that's the currently known long-term effects of having had the virus. So one of the things that makes me just a little bit crazy is the politicalization of COVID-19. It's not just air quotes, a disease. It has turned itself or morphed itself or whatever, or we have changed it into a political issue. And I really want to say what I'm going to talk about is not about politics or political issue. I just want to talk about science. I just want to talk about, here's what we know. And it has nothing to do with anything other than that. I'm not blaming anybody for anything. I just want to talk about the illness and what we know so far. So what we know about any disease, if it's cancer, if it's diabetes, if it's COVID-19, the info that we have evolves with the clinical information and the findings of scientific research. Any disease, what we understand about it changes the longer that we do research and care for people with that disease.
So it's not that people don't know, but as you receive more information,
right?
You have to just update people and say, "Hey, now we know this, and we didn't know it a month ago."
It's like that. What's that insurance commercial? Well, when you've seen a lot, you know a lot, or whatever the tagline is. You know that insurance commercial with that guy that was in.
Oh yeah. The great character actor. He won an Oscar for.
Yes. He was in that prison.
Oh come on, Charlie. J.K. Simmons.
HBO.
J.K. Simmons. Okay. Yes.
And what's the tagline?
When you've
seen a lot.
We've seen a lot, so we know a thing or two. Something along those lines.
When you've seen a thing or two, you know a thing or two.
There you are. I'll take your word for it. Okay.
So it's like that. You know more as you see more. Right. So it's not about anything more than that. So it's really stirring the pot and unfair to say things like, in March, we were told this, and now that didn't turn out to be right. Or, we can't believe what scientists say because they keep changing their mind. No, you're not being nice, and you're not being accurate when we say that. We want scientists to change their mind when they find out new information. That's their job. That's the expected part of science. You're going to continue to get information and you're going to say, oh, well, when this first came out, I thought this was true, but now it's not true because now we're seeing this.
And I don't know. I think maybe semantics might be part of that. I'm not sure if it's so much, I've changed my mind, but rather I have more information now. So I have a better understanding of this. Because but what?
But the general population takes the message and says, you told us masks weren't needed back in March, and now you want us all to put on a mask. I mean, it's taken, it doesn't matter really, I think, what we say, but it's taken as, well, you were wrong in March, so you must be wrong now too. And who the heck knows? Maybe we are, because as we get more information, we might find out more that, this or that. But the fact is that the scientists and the doctors who are the epidemiologists who are looking at this are saying, here's what we know now. And it's our best information in the situation that we're in. So you have to remember that COVID-19 is a novel virus. That means new. That means we haven't seen this guy come along before. Mm-hmm. There's been previous COVID viruses, but they're not COVID-19. They're a different, has different idiosyncrasies and aspects to it. Anyone who has more than one child can appreciate that each child is totally different. And it makes no sense why they're different. My girls are 13 and a half months apart. I cannot tell you why they are so different. I mean, The world didn't change that much. My uterus didn't change that much. I mean, they went to the same schools. They ate the same food. I don't know why they're so different, but darn it, they are. Mm-hmm. So if your children can turn out totally different, then the COVIDs can also be totally different.
So let me ask you something. When it's 19, I'm sorry, I have forgotten. What does a 19 represent?
It was discovered in 2019.
Oh, okay. That's okay. So it's the year.
It's the year.
Right. Okay.
So if there was a new COVID had come out this year, what would it be called, Charlie?
Oh my God, I hate spot quizzes. Can you give me a hint?
COVID-20.
COVID-20.
So with these viruses, just like with kids, what you would do with one isn't going to work with the other. Sometimes it's like, so what if I knew that about this COVID? It's not going to work with COVID-19. Just what I learned about parenting Rose does not help me parenting Juliana. It just isn't. Okay. So now that rant is over, let's talk about what we know about the long-term effects about COVID. And the reason I did the first part was because this is what we know right now. And in a week, there might be something else, and there might not be, or they might have figured out something else. So one way that studies are developed is when clinicians notice something is different in patients who are taking a particular drugs or have a specific disease. These are the things that make you say, I wonder if this is related to that. So like back when people were taking fen-phen for weight loss, there were in this one center where there were a lot of people taking fen-phen, the person who was doing like these cardiac scans started noticing very similar cardiac changes in the people who were taking fen-phen. And that's how they figured out that if you took fen-phen, you had these cardiac results. It's somebody who's doing the testing who says, that's weird. I'm seeing the same thing in the people who are taking the same drugs. So at the University of California, a radiologist noticed that some people who were diagnosed with COVID-19 had scars on their lungs. So what they did is they said, that's weird. So they followed up with 33 of these patients more than a month later, And they haven't published this data yet, but what they found suggested that more than 1/3 had tissue death that had led to visible scars on the lungs. These scientists are going to follow up with people for several years to see if these scars get better or get worse. There are some cases of more severe infections that also caused worse long-term impacts, like lungs, heart, immune system, and brain, so that even mild cases can have a life-changing effects, notably a lingering malaise that's really similar to chronic fatigue syndrome. Yeah. So they're seeing people who have had the virus and not even a bad, quote unquote, bad case of the virus. They didn't end up in the hospital or anything, but they're having a phenomenally hard time kind of making it through the day. CT images of 919 patients from published studies were examined. So what they did is, they looked at older studies, and they looked at 919 patients from these published studies, and they were examined and found that there were the lower lobes, your lungs have upper lobes, middle lobes, lower lobes. The lower lobes of the lungs were most frequently damaged. The scans were riddled with opaque patches that indicated inflammation that might make it difficult to breathe during sustained exercise. Visible damage normally reduced after 2 weeks. There was an Austrian study that also found that lung damage lessened with time. 88% of the participants had visible damage 6 weeks after being discharged from the hospital, but by 12 weeks, this number had fallen to 56%. But that's still 54% of the people who had visible changes on their lungs. Symptoms might take a long time to fade. One study followed up on people who had been hospitalized and found that even a month after being discharged, more than 70% were reporting shortness of breath, and 13.5% were still using oxygen at home.
Jeez.
The immune system may also be damaged by COVID-19, causing either an over or an underreaction of the body's immune system. So in the 1918
Spanish flu,
yeah. There were a lot of deaths in a younger population. And the thought was that their immune systems were like so on top of things that they had this massive response. And the massive response kind of set their body off into multi-system organ failure. Right. But the older people who you would have thought would, have been more compromised, they had sort of a slower immune response, and so they fared better. Now, that's in the 1919. So now, the immune system is also playing a part in the long-term effects of COVID-19. So they've found that there can be an over or underreaction of the body's immune system. Some people with COVID-19 develop a widespread inflammation and organ problems. It seems as though there's a lag in terms of people who, in terms of the virus getting hold of the person, and then this causes a severe inflammation. But then when they recover, it may take a while for the immune system to settle back to normal. So you might be hyper, like allergic and that kind of thing for a while, or you may be more vulnerable to getting other diseases because your body hasn't bounced back in terms of being able to fight those off. So an overreactive immune system can lead to inflammation, and one particularly vulnerable organ is the heart. During the acute phase of COVID-19, about 1/3 of patients show cardiovascular symptoms. One such symptom is cardiomyopathy, in which the muscles of the heart become stretched, stiff, or thickened, affecting the heart's ability to pump blood. Some patients also have pulmonary thrombosis, in which a clot blocks the blood vessel to the lungs. The virus can also injure wider circulatory system, for instance, by infecting the cells lining blood vessels. Long-term studies are needed to understand the neurological and psychological consequences of COVID-19. Many people who become severely ill experience neurological complications such as delirium, and there's also evidence that cognitive difficulties, including confusion and memory loss, persist for some time after the acute symptoms have cleared. But it's not clear whether this is because the virus can infect the brain or whether the symptoms are a secondary consequence, maybe from the inflammation. One of the most insidious long-term effects of COVID-19 is the least understood, and that's the severe fatigue. So over the last 9 months, an increasing number of people have reported crippling exhaustion and malaise after having the virus. Support groups on sites such as Facebook host hundreds of members who call themselves long haulers. They struggle to get out of bed or to work for more than a few minutes or hours at a time. One study of 143 people with COVID-19 discharged from a hospital in Rome found that 53% had reported fatigue and 43% had shortness of breath, an average of 2 months after their symptoms started. So your symptoms start, and for 2 months, you're sick like this.
Yes.
A study of patients in China showed that 25% had abnormal lung function after 3 months, and that 16% were still fatigued. Paul Garner, who's an infectious disease researcher at the Liverpool School of Tropical Medicine, reported that his initial symptoms were mild, but then he experienced what he said was a roller coaster of ill health, extreme emotions, and utter exhaustion. His mind became foggy, and new symptoms cropped up almost every day, ranging from breathlessness to arthritis in his hands. The fatigue does not seem to be limited to severe cases. It's common in people who have mild symptoms and therefore might not have even been tested for the virus. So if you haven't been tested, but you're just like, God, I'm just dragging my way through life, and it's a new kind of symptom, it might be that you had the virus and it might be a long-term effect, or it could be that this is just a really depressing year and you're really depressed. And I don't mean to laugh, but I was just telling Charlie, I just watched Hunters, and now I'm reading about the Nazis in America, and I'm really depressed. But I get through the day. So the results of these planned studies are going to be used for the development of clinical guidelines on what the care of survivors of COVID-19 should look like. But you got to remember, research being conducted and funded, we've only had this really, since February, March. So it's a really short time in terms of having enough numbers to really be able to say, here's what happens and here's how we need to handle it. We're kind of going day by day and saying, okay, what's next? What's happening? I thought you might want to take a look at what it is to have COVID-19. So I interviewed a woman named Nicole, who's a 38-year-old woman who was diagnosed with COVID-19. And really, you got to listen to this interview because you just listen to her talk. She never went in the hospital. She was never on a vent. I could have interviewed people like that. But this is, a mom with a job and what she went through. One thing, she said she booked a vacation and has no memory of having booked the vacation.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, Nicole, how could that have happened? And she says, I have no idea. She said, but I researched it all. And I booked a vacation. So, she talks about, memory problems, the fatigue. It really should listen to this. So we're going to, that'll be out the same week that you're listening to this podcast. So look on for her interview on Passionate World Talk Radio, on our radio show there, Everyone Dies. She's really has an incredible story that's worth hearing. And we also have a link on our webpage, everyonedies.org, to all of the radio shows that we have on Passionate World Talk Radio.
And I'm sorry, it's Passionate Talk?
Passionate World Talk Radio.
Oh,
but they can just go to everyonedies.org
for the direct link.
And there's a link up at the top. It says radio shows or radio. Just click on that and you can see all the interviews there. And I also, Sandy's also going to post a reference to this, the article, The Lasting Misery of Coronavirus Long Haulers. So just when you thought it was safe to go back in the restaurant to have a drink.
No, I haven't had that thought since like February.
So now in our third half, we're going to have the pleasure of Charlie giving us a brief little chat about people who are not buried with their grave markers. So feel free to grab a drink. We'll wait.
Oh, thank you. Oh, not me. Sorry. Yes.
And Charles.
Well, you know what? Originally, this segment of Where Are They Now was going to include Dorothy Parker's ashes being filed in a filing cabinet and forgotten about, the connection between the burials of comedian John Belushi in 1982 and basketball legend Kobe Bryant this year, and also Alfred Hitchcock's film The Trouble with Harry, which featured a missing corpse. Sorry, not a missing corpse, but a moving corpse. And it was his last story, actually, of the moving corpse, which led me to Thomas Paine. Yes, that Thomas Paine, whose pamphlet, Common Sense, wrote the American Revolution into existence about why the British colony, aka America, should go to war with England to gain independence. It was very well read. Folks read it and said, that makes sense. Thank you. The colonies rally, go to war, and it's not going well. General George Washington was very good at retreating in the dead of night to live to fight another day when his troops were being overwhelmed by the British. So our American troops were becoming more and more disillusioned. And at one of the lowest moments, when there was little food and some soldiers actually ate the leather from their boots, Thomas Paine was it. Yeah. I mean, literally, Marianne, there was nothing. And these guys that, I don't remember if it was like a contract but anyways, there was an agreement that included food. There were no formal uniforms, but at least, provisions to keep you warm. And didn't happen. A lot of that didn't come to pass. So that just added to the misery and disillusionment with, how the British troops were just, overwhelming, the American soldiers. So at one of these times, they would be camped out at different places. But Thomas Paine was at one of these camps and saw what was happening and was inspired. And he begins to write a series of pamphlets called The American Crisis to recharge the revolutionary cause. These pamphlets worked to boost the morale of the soldiers. And the very first one, you're probably familiar with this phrase, the first one begins, "These are the times that try men's souls." A message that resonates to this very day. Paine spent the last few months of his life at a farmhouse located in Greenwich Village, which was eventually demolished. The farmhouse, not Greenwich Village. Though the late 50s, early 60s, Greenwich Village was almost demolished, but that's another story. So at this farmhouse, of course, now it is demolished, where today stands Marie Crisis Cafe. Moving ahead, once upon a time, once an artist friend of Paine's asked him for his skull to study after Paine's death. Paine said no.
Well, I'm glad they waited till after he died.
Yes, so I mean that's how you know it's a friend. Wait,
really?
You know, yes.
Yeah.
He didn't.
You'd wait. You'd wait till I was dead, wouldn't you?
Yes. I just wanted to. I just wanted to make sure. Didn't want to just blurt something out.
No rush to judgment there.
No. So Paine said no to his friend's request because he did not wish to have his bones disturbed. Silly man. With that foreshadowing, Paine died in 1809. And some of his remains are still buried in what was his property in New Rochelle, New York, which also happens to be the home of Rob and Laura Petrie of the Dick Van Dyke Show.
Really?
Yep.
I didn't remember that. I didn't remember that.
Yeah, New Rochelle.
I loved that show growing up.
But somebody said no.
I always wanted that bow that Rosemary wore in her hair. I always wanted a bow like that.
Yeah. I think it was. No, it was Carl Reiner, who just died a few weeks ago. He lived in New Rochelle, so he placed the Petries in New Rochelle.
That makes sense.
Yep. So now a contemporary of Thomas Paine, a fellow by the name of William Cobbett, or maybe it's Cobbett. No, it's Cobbett. Very conservative man. At that time, very pro-crown, extremely anti-American revolution. For whatever reason, read Paine's pamphlets and became a convert. Became a huge fan and supporter of Paine. Paine, I did not know this, was a British citizen. I mean, I knew he had been born in England, but he never renounced his British citizenship. And Cobbett decided he should be buried back in England, and tried to raise money, tried to raise funds to take Paine's body back to England, for a great burial to honor the great man.
This is why you have advanced directives and advanced care planning, or people are going to break up your body and send you places you don't want to go.
Words to the wise. There you are. Wise words, Marianne. Exactly. Yes. Always prepare. Preparation.
Yeah.
We that cannot be said enough. Prepare. Well,
because when you've seen a thing or two, you know a thing or two.
Exactly. J.K. Simmons will be receiving royalties for that. Well, speaking of preparation, Mr. Cobbett, didn't bother with any preparations, like little things like illegal documents or bureaucratic process. Now, instead, he went to the cemetery with a friend, dug up the body, put it on a ship, and then sent it to England, where he struggled to raise money, for that big monument. Well, there were few takers. Eventually, he actually hawked locks of Paine's hair and tried to sell that. Surprisingly, there were few takers for that too. There were arguments back and forth between America and England about which side of the Atlantic should Paine be interred. Then Cobbett dies. I keep saying Cobbett. I keep thinking of the virus. Jeez. Oh, I just lost my ear thing. Not my hearing, my ear thingy. So I'm operating on one cylinder, which is not the first time. Hang on a second. Don't go away.
How are we supposed to tell?
Yeah, exactly. Let's see here. Let's put this.
So have a drink while Charlie finds his ears.
There we are.
It's like Mr. Potato Head.
Actually, I was thinking more of some situation on Star Trek, but yes, I guess it is more like Mr. Potato Head. Who am I trying to kid? Yes, so then Cobbett dies. And of course he dies not of course, but he dies in debt. So his children auction off his, and I have not had a drop, I promise, auction off his estate, but the auctioneer refuses to auction off human bones. So, oh brother, then the subsequent trail of Payne's bones becomes unclear. But around 1870, there was word that his skull and right hand were in London. Different people at different times claimed to have one or the other. No one knows for sure what happened to the rest of the remains. Cobbett died in 1835. The bones might have been passed to any variety of people. I found maybe to a day laborer, maybe to Cobbett's secretary, even a furniture dealer popped up. But eventually everything just went into oblivion. Stories circulated that some of his bones were lost, destroyed, sold individually, or made into buttons. And that is the button of this story.
Wow.
Yes.
Advanced care planning.
Yes.
Make a plan.
Yes. Remember that. Always prepare. When you can't speak for yourself, who's going to speak for you? And make sure that person knows your wishes, and then that person's going to follow through. You need a healthcare proxy. Just remember, there are several forms, but just remember, healthcare proxy, a will, power of attorney. Other people say you need a couple other things, that's fine. But please, 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 your homework is to make sure you have those documents. Thank you very much.
And Charlie's going to check.
Yeah.
Well,
they'll maybe come to your house and knock on the door.
With his buttons and his booze. So thank you all for listening. Please stay tuned for future episodes of Everyone Dies. Our thanks to executive producer, retired Major General David, our producer Sandy, John, our technical advisor, Molly, our Twitter correspondent, and our friends, family, and loyal listeners who are supporting our works at Everyone Dies.
This is Charlie Navarrete.
And I'm Marianne Matzo, and we look forward to talking with you soon. Remember, every day is a gift.
This podcast does not provide medical advice. All discussion on this podcast, such as treatments, dosages, outcomes, charts, patient profiles, advice, messages, and any other discussion are for informational purposes only and are not a substitute for professional medical advice or treatment. Always seek the advice of your primary care practitioner or other qualified health providers with any questions that you may have regarding your health. Never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something you have heard from this podcast. If you think you may have a medical emergency, call your doctor or 911 immediately. Everyone Dies does not recommend or endorse any specific tests, practitioners, products, procedures, opinions, or other information that may be mentioned in this podcast. Reliance on any information provided in this podcast by persons appearing on this podcast at the invitation of Everyone Dies or by other members is solely at your own risk.